right, here we go, everybody. Good afternoon. Yes, we are live. Let me check. I believe audio should be fine. Let me check, everybody. It sounds like, for me, yeah, audio is good. Audio is sound on my part. Good afternoon, Janet. Good afternoon, everyone. Folks, we're going to be joined by Justin Katz coming up. We continue to make improvements and adjustments with our broadcasts, but I think you're going to like this. I think it looks clean. Very happy with a lot of the improvements that we're making. So let me, I want to double check. I always like to make sure our audio is clean. Well, I know it is for that, but I want to see what it's like for everything else. So there we go. I think it's nice and clean. Yep. I think we're good to go. Okay. I think we are more than ready. Now we're going to be joined by Justin Katz, managing editor, anchorrising.com. Yes, clear picture, said Gina Dwyer. I think so. I always want to make sure that the audio, I can usually tell that the video is solid, and it is. But sometimes we want to just make sure that, let me share this. Worcester police are looking for someone. So, folks, everybody should be, I think, in a good mood. That was a tremendous Patriots game last night. Patriots move on in the playoffs. It's just a completely different experience when Patriots are in postseason play. Let me also check that. Of course, we had a lot of protests over the weekend. So there's that. We'll go there. Good afternoon, Pat. Yes, that's exactly right, Donald. I think so. You know, I don't I don't understand all of this, in the protest of ICE out. Cranston Police, they're one of the few agencies that they do, in fact, work with ICE. So I don't understand. We'll talk about that a little bit. And folks, we're going to be getting underway in just a couple of moments. Let me just double check. Okay. Yes. Let me do that. Okay. And we're good. All right. And I think, oh, good. Thank you, Bendy. Yep. I want to thank Bendy, who's been such a supporter. Hi there, Carol. Good afternoon, one and all. Folks, just a programming note. Tomorrow, we will not have, I will be on assignment. It's very exciting. I'll probably tell you about it afterwards, but we will not be live tomorrow from 1 to 2. We will not. But when you see it, I am part of what's going to be an international project, and it's very, very exciting. So only one chosen to be part of this, but we'll have more details, and we're going to be filming tomorrow. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, so much of this falls into the states, so they do what they can do. Yes, everybody's in good spirits. There were no arrests over the course of the weekend, at least not the Rhode Island protests. So you had the protest on Thursday night, Providence City Hall, and then there were a series of protests on Saturday. They had the senior citizens protest in Edgewood at St. Paul's Church. I'm saying that. I mean, anyone could have gone, and there were other people there. But, I mean, that was my church. That was my school. I attended St. Paul's School, as all my siblings did. It's obviously changed quite a bit. And then, let's see, yesterday was the State House. What I think is interesting is the Providence Journal, how they, yeah, that's right. Nope, not chosen. Okay, are we good? I'm waiting on Pete. We should be. I don't know why we wouldn't be. Um, the Providence Journal, they the Providence Journal posted a photo of someone calling for, Pete says yes, the execution of President Trump. And they didn't even question the individual. They didn't say, we are hesitant to even post this, or why would someone do this? No, they just ran the photo. And all of these individuals, we'll obviously talk about it. It is still um, really the national conversation, as much as if Iran falls, just so you understand, if Iran falls, that will come to the headlines without question. Minneapolis is a big story. I understand that some people don't fully understand the nature of how news works, because you see people saying, what happened to this? What happened to that? Notice how no one's talking about this. Notice how no one's talking. I mean, something is a story until it gets knocked out of the headlines. It's like King of the Mountain. Hi there, Denise Oliver. And right now, all of these ICE protests around the country, they are the big story. There's Jay Beckman checking in from Vegas. Folks, remember, if you are on Facebook, you can share that you are watching. Also live on YouTube. And then we continue to grow on X and all of our platforms. And I always encourage people to make sure that you follow some of the other channels, just in case, there've been times something happens. Okay. And the YouTube connection is solid. So we're going to begin in just a moment. Well, they're getting there. I mean, they're definitely active in Rhode Island. They are not. It depends on the community. It depends on the community. Hi there, Donna. Yes. In Providence, obviously, they're not. The Providence City Council is against them. I'm fearful that a lot of this then rubs off onto the police. So we're going to begin. Again, everybody, good afternoon on this Monday. Oh my God, is that true? Governor Walz of Minnesota and his wife are visiting the memorial as we speak right now. For Renee Good, shot and killed by his ICE officer in what they're calling an incident of domestic terrorism. So they are visiting the shrine. She is the new George Floyd, the ultimate in white privilege, where she completely, basically, her and her partner were saying, well, you're not going to shoot me. I'm a white woman. So you're definitely not, I don't know what you're going to do, but you're not going to shoot me. We have white privilege. The ultimate attitude of white privilege, as a matter of fact. Folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by Propane Plus. Call them today in Rhode Island, 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359. Always online at propaneplus.com for all your propane needs. Propane is a tremendous source of energy. It's energy for everyone because it's affordable, it's sustainable. Propane is equitable. Propane is good for the environment, lowest carbon fuel, and now it's renewable. Propane is energy for everyone. Propane Plus. Call them 401-885-4209 or in Massachusetts 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus. This portion of our program is brought to you by the Cohasset Inn, 226 Cohasset Avenue, West Warwick. Lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. The Cohasset Inn can handle a large group. So if you're going to, spur of the moment, suddenly you're going to You want to have a function for 20 people or 30 people, or someone's leaving work and you want to toast that person. And then you want to make sure you have enough room. They also have a large bar area. A lot of people like the energy off of the bar area. I'll tell you who has it. The Cowesett Inn, plenty of free, safe parking. Plus they have the coffee at Cowesett. I'll see you at the Cowesett Inn, 226 Cowesett Avenue in West Warwick. So we're going to be joined by Justin Katz, managing editor of anchorrising.com. We're going to do our segment, Politics This Week. I want to clarify, I think, and just, some of this is declaration of the obvious a little bit. Some of the people's comments. I'm not saying, that many of these individuals, I'm not saying they don't have the right. They have the right to protest. What you saw in Edgewood on Saturday, and we have the video posted on Facebook. We have it posted on YouTube, and I think even on Instagram. With the exception of the people that wouldn't listen to the police and they insisted on standing on the island. But they were on the sidewalk, a little bit of a distraction at the intersection of Warwick Avenue and Broad Street. Used to be Adams Drug right there. Now there's CVS. Keep in mind, if someone fell off the island into the street and something happened, they'd probably take action. I'm not saying that, but that's a huge difference between people protesting and then people injecting themselves into a situation that is a police operation, let alone federal agents. And they're federal agents. And there's so much misinformation put out by the other side. They're not really police. They can't do this. They can't do that. They're still a federal agent with a gun. And bottom line, and there's been so much well written about this. This woman, she made a series of poor choices. And this business of injecting her and the partner into the situation, I can't be clear. They had no business to be there. That's not a protest. They were interfering with a federal legal police operation. They injected themselves. As I have mentioned, it's not as if they were living in a house and then the police were executing, they had an arrest warrant for someone in the house. You see that, by the way, sometimes. You do see that sometimes. And then that person gets in trouble. This person had no business being there. They were purposely using the car as a weapon and interfering with police. Now, joining us right now, he is the managing editor of anchorrising.com. Our segment is Politics This Week, and it is Justin Katz. Justin, we have so much to get through with this, but I want to just start off just some of your general observations of what we have seen play out, and specifically some of the local politicians and their reactions since this event happened in Minneapolis.
Well, the politicians have been utterly shameful. I mean, you have them coming out and saying things like obviously you've got the radicals saying that, like Sanchez, Representative Sanchez saying, Nazi, Gestapo, ICE, these people will pay. He actually said that. I didn't see anybody ask him any questions about that. You've got David Morales, another socialist representative running for mayor of Providence, out there giving the phone number to get involved. And if you suspect ICE activity, as if it's the criminal activity, report it to this line, which it's not the authorities. It's kind of the opposite of the authorities. That is extremely dangerous. It starts to set people up to get involved. And as you were just talking about, to interfere and to take matters into their own hands, as these women did in Minneapolis. You've got the Rhode Island Senate voting to honor Renee Good. They're doing this meanwhile while facts are still coming out. Nobody knows what really happened yet, nobody's admitting it yet. Not all the videos were out, and they're debating it. And what's shameful there is it was considered controversial because it wasn't radical enough. It's controversial because it didn't condemn ICE. It should have been controversial because the Rhode Island Senate is asking for more of this. They're honoring people who put themselves in danger to try to stop lawful law enforcement. And that's apparently what they want in Rhode Island. They're trying to import this here. And so for the politicians, I think that's almost unambiguously their goal, is to increase the amount of violence and dangerous situations in Rhode Island. One can only imagine it's because they want this sort of thing in their own state so they can get out there and grandstand about how horrible it is. And it's really, really disconcerting, especially because turning to the news media, I mean, I've had one-on-one discussions with journalists around here who it's almost like they will not admit the car hit the officer. And
Yep.
you have to prove that. Like, here's a video, it shows it. They just won't admit it. So it's mind-boggling to me. I mean, that's kind of my first response is I can't believe how far gone these people are.
Justin, and I'm glad you brought up that Senate resolution, because I also notice the press, I think it was Kathy Gregg of the Providence Journal, the angle they go after is just who's not going along with it. Instead of, to me, it would be, why is this trying to be pushed through? And we don't even know what happened. And before you put a resolution condemning ICE, like, why don't you pause and actually find out? But that's not, to me, the angle they take. The angle they take is, who would hold this up? Like, surely you're going to condemn ICE for what they did to that poor woman. And of course, it's Tierra Mack with the resolution.
Yeah, and I mean, my objections, I think, I mean, it went through unanimous consent to consider it immediately without putting it through the entire process of a committee and all that. And then it was approved by a voice vote. No record of who said aye. I don't even know if they asked who said nay. I don't think they did. You can't hear on the microphones on the video there. I actually contacted some of the Republican senators and said, why didn't you object to the unanimous consent? Why didn't you why didn't you vote no or insist on a roll call vote? This, I think, should have been, I mean, these resolutions, they usually they're unobjectionable. Let's thank the now deceased President Carter for his service, that kind of thing. They're usually sail through. I think we're reaching a point where you have to start, as a Republican or even a common sense, sane Democrat, you have to start saying, no. The facts on the ground are changing. This is very controversial. Our doing this might encourage other people to put themselves in harm's way. This at least needs to go through committee. I think we've got to get to that point. But as you said, I think it was, what's her name, Nuri, the reporter for the Journal who reported on this. It's not even a question. Like, why shouldn't it even go farther and condemn ICE and call for the beheading of the officer? I mean, that's how radical the journalists are getting around on this issue. It's crazy.
Justin, you know what else? I found it very insightful listening to some of the protesters, and I mean around the country, because as you say, and it kind of amplifies, I don't hear, well, here's my point. I don't hear Democrat politicians, and we'll just stay local. I don't see any media covering how dangerous the rhetoric is, such as when you see these women, and whether it's in Minneapolis, somewhere else, and they're saying, well, we have to do something. They're not real police, and they're kidnapping people, and they're wearing masks, and no one knows where they go, and they're separating families. If that were legit, then it would almost be justified that you fight back in a situation like this. But the fact of the matter is, as you and I have discussed, they wear masks because then the extremists go after their families and who they are. That this business of their kidnapping people, they're lawfully detained. These are lawful actions that they're executing. This business of their separating families. When someone gets pulled over in a DUI, they're separated from people are separated from their families. If you're a parent and you get arrested, the ACI is filled with men and women that are, quote, separated by their families. But what my point is, I don't hear anyone locally of mainstream media condemn so much of the rhetoric that is pushed out there by the progressives on this issue.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's almost like there's this agreement among that. They all know it's false. And I think even those women, Renee Good and her spouse, I think even they know it's all false, because if they were truly facing Nazis, two middle-aged women wouldn't be putting their car right in front of their caravan by themselves to face them off with their cameras, getting in their faces, saying, go to lunch, big boy. They wouldn't be doing that if they really thought this was a murderous squad that could grab anybody and throw them in prison. It's like they're play acting and they think there's no consequences. And that's almost more dangerous. I mean, I've heard some commentary asking, why would Renee Good say, it's all right, man, I'm not mad at you, or something like that. It's like they've got this script in their head. And you can imagine being the officer and you're walking around and these women are saying, "Oh, we're not going to change the license plates." What are you even talking about, lady? I mean, it must have been so weird to him, but you can
Yeah.
tell they're sitting there psyching themselves up, getting ready for this. And I mean but that's, as you say, that's being prepared by the journalists and by the politicians like Jacob Fry in Minneapolis, who I can't even believe people in Minneapolis would put up with that. But they're encouraging this, and that they're going to get more of it. It's very, very dangerous to be play acting like this. And that's at best, Renee Good made some really, really bad decisions, and the other woman, Drive Baby Drive.
Yeah.
These are they think they're playing. It's not. It's a deadly game, and you would think after this the media would start and politicians would start to reflect that, but they're not. They're doubling down, which is craziness.
And Justin, just so people understand, when you have a group of agents, let's just say they descend on a street and there was no one there. Well, there's still an element of danger. I don't believe it's been revealed exactly who they were going to go, but when I've actually gone on some of those with police, there's tension and there's nerves, and you don't know many times who's in that house. You don't know if they have a weapon. You don't know if this is going to be peaceful. So there's already built-in anxiety that goes along with this. When you now put 10 people honking horns on the street and then throwing things at them and screaming at them. And I also saw some of the protesters say to the police, "You're supposed to de-escalate." It's as if the police are supposed to just like operating around a bubble where no matter what is said or done to them, they're supposed to block that out. These people were absolutely antagonizing. When this went on for several minutes, you see her honking a horn and dancing. I mean, they completely put themselves in harm's way. And yet you have Congressman Gabe Amo of Rhode Island, CD1. He posted, Justin, that she was murdered by ICE agents. And I can't find one Democrat, and I can't even find any of the usual suspects of the TV stations or the paper or any of them condemning. That is so irresponsible. A congressman calling it a murder.
It is. And you raise another important point. I mean, this is in a nationwide context, and most of it we're not seeing when it's not getting reported. But, if attacks on these officers and their families are up thousands of percent and going and increasing. They're living. That's why they're covering their faces, because they're being hunted down. They're protesters at some of their facilities across the country. The protesters are blocking the gates and standing in front of the vehicles, and that creates a dangerous situation. In some places, protesters, insurgents is probably a better word, are actively boxing them in with their cars so they can't move. That's not a protest. That's an ambush. And so when you get these officers and they're in a situation, there's a car parked and blocking the road. There are people starting to come in. Who knows what's waiting around the corner? There is a tense situation. You're just trying to get things moving so that you're out of that dangerous situation. It's no longer a game to them, and that's what it's. A lot of the talking heads and the professional journalists you would think would have a better sense of, well, this woman created this situation of tension, and so you're going to expect bad things to happen, but they don't. It's almost like you're saying, like the police are just supposed to play along. They're supposed to somehow know, oh, this is a 37-year-old mother. She's just dropped off her 6-year-old at school. This is just a game. They can't know that, especially when there's a car coming at them and hitting them. But that's. I mean, I think Gabe Amo was the one who said cold-blooded murder. I mean, it just it's almost too much to process that's coming out of the mouth of an elected representative for our state.
A couple other just thoughts on this. I saw Congressman Seth Magaziner said, the policies of this administration caused this to happen. It's actually the opposite, because if Minneapolis police were cooperating with them, over a year ago, I was in Providence. The FBI was going to get a suspect. Providence police blocked off the street. The FBI rolled into motion, in action, and then they got the individual out. And there's actually, it got a lot of attention because I actually interviewed the guy as he was being apprehended. But my point is, the police blocked off the street for the FBI. If Minneapolis was not operating under sanctuary policies, the entire street actually should have been blocked off. You don't let anyone go past. Let them go, take out who they're looking to remove, and you wouldn't have all this foolishness going on the street. But you're exactly right with this drive, baby, drive. And another thing that I want to just point out is they use the term neighbor, and that is thrown around. When they got that MS-13 gang member in Providence in the summertime, that David Morales posted, they took one of our neighbors, and his name was, I forget what his name is, but they have like hijacked that term. A neighbor to me is they live, either across the street from you, down the street, next door, but they toss around neighbor could be if you're going to see someone, an hour away. Oh, I'm just checking on my neighbor. And it gives a false sense. And that's why I think some people thought, oh, she must like live on the street. Or like, do you notice that they've co-opted that term neighbor to now it could be anyone. If there's someone in Westerly and they're with someone in Woonsocket, they say, oh, I'm just looking out for my neighbor.
Yeah,
but it's like actually, it's just like a fellow resident or citizen. But go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, well, and a lot of that rhetoric, it's part and parcel of the dishonesty of it. I actually, one of the talking heads, one of the progressives on the CNN panel, you see the clips on social media often, actually said she had just dropped off her child. She was pulling away from the curb, and that's when no, that's not even close. Even I commented to Kathy Gregg online. Even she's reporting she had just dropped off her 6-year-old at school. Like at best, it had been 10 minutes, 15 minutes earlier. It's like she dropped the child off, and then went somewhere else to do activism, which might be her job. I don't know. But there was no relation. There was no, but they let that kind of lie sit out there and fester as if she had just pulled to the curb, dropped off either a child or her significant other, and it was just trying to pull in. She was waving people by. It was a complete misunderstanding. No, we knew that from the beginning. It was obvious from the beginning that's not what was happening. But they let that go out there, and it's like that neighbor thing. She's my neighbor. Oh, it was her block. They're deliberately confusing people because that lets them keep this lie going, and it's they really need to. What's amazing to me is the unanimity among them, where it's like they're just like with the Biden administration. Where are the whistleblowers? Where are the responsible people? They weren't there. It's the same thing with this. Where are the responsible journalists? Where are the responsible Democrat politicians coming forward and saying, you know what, guys? No, we have. I see this on the other side. By the way, I've seen MAGA Republicans saying, all right, the prison reports you're seeing on Renee Good are false. Let's not go there. And you see the correction on the right, but among the Democrats, it's a free for all. Say whatever you can to advance our political agenda. And that's really dangerous.
And Justin, when we talk about the street, and now we've all seen the video, you're exactly right. So many of their talking points, like, oh, she was just fleeing the scene. Well, you're not supposed to flee the scene. They were telling her to get out of the car. I saw a progressive lawyer saying, there's strict guidelines about firing on a fleeing vehicle. It wasn't as though the officer that went to pull her over fired. It's all because she was aiming and then did in fact hit him. And just so people listening or watching know, every police officer that I've spoken to, obviously off the air, people that I deal with, every single one of them have said it was a justifiable shoot. When you are, she's gunning the car, they're not listening to instructions. But Justin, you bring up another good point, and that is, for instance, like the mayor and others to say, when you start to say, peaceful protest is part of American society, this wasn't a protest. They were interfering with federal agents. She wasn't like just waving traffic by. Number one, Kathy Gregg or whoever, why was she parked that way? We know why she was parked that way, to block the agents. Number two, she was waving the other caravan people to go by. These people, I don't know how else to explain it. They had no right to be there. They had no legal reason to be there. You don't protest at a police action. It's not the same of we have a right to protest. They were trying to prevent the individual that ICE was trying to get into custody.
Yeah, and that's kind of insurgency. I mean, it's almost like if we were at war in another country and the military was picking up a leader from the enemy and taking them to the base, and vehicles are trying to box them in and help the person escape. That's basically what they're doing. But even with all this video, every little bit of it, you've got to prove, first, the officer shouldn't have been in front of the car. Well, he wasn't. She backed up and turned the car to face him. she was no threat. No, she gunned it, and you could
Yeah.
hear the wheels spinning in the ice. I mean, that's on a video of from his perspective. You can hear it. Zzz. That's what was being created, and even then, they're saying that's not what happened. So a lot of the deeper questions, like what were they doing there? What was it? Should they have even been trying to stop this from happening? You can't even get agreements on what you're seeing in a video. To try to get these radical activists, it's like it wouldn't even matter. Well, of course they're trying to box them in and help the prisoner escape and all that. Of course, but she was just trying to flee. And I on that point, they had the other woman. I have no doubt that if they could have let her go without shooting her, Renee Good, they would have done that, arrested the other one, and helped and let it clean up after the fact. But that's not what happened. She was gunning for him. And if she hit him, she might back up and hit somebody else and then drive off and hit a pedestrian. These are all the things police have to decide in a split second. And so for our journalists and politicians to not acknowledge that, and then to have the Senate being controversial because they didn't condemn him rather than even putting the thing forward, the resolution, we are in crazy town here. And frankly, I don't know how somebody commented, if you're in a situation in an area where people won't even believe their eyes, start to think about what results you'll get if you're ever in court facing a jury in this community or these politicians or these journalists. It's starting to create a dangerous situation, I think, for all of us, because it's just, we're living in a madness.
Justin, you know what's interesting also is when a lot of the talking points thrown out by the left or by people like Enrique Sanchez or David Morales, I do see them, and so much of it's misinformation, but I do then see it like posted. So I think it is dangerous. Like, you actually have people out there that think they're just kidnapping people, and they're going in and they're kidnapping children, and they're kidnapping schools, and they're not really police, and they cover their faces, and they're actually believing all that stuff. And going back to that day, the wife was then crying, saying, it's my fault. I dragged her out here. I find Renee Good, it's bizarre when she rolls down the window and then is saying to them, I'm not mad at you. I mean, her whole interaction is just bizarre. But the fact that they thought that they were ICE warriors and they're doing their part, and this is an injustice. And much like whether it was yesterday at the State House or Cranston in front of St. Paul's Church, they're all marching ICE out now. People need to recognize what are they talking about? I mean, you're talking about, no matter how many profiles of some of these criminals that are killers and child molesters, and so no matter how much of that they release, it's as if these people can't equate that these federal agents are removing dangerous criminals who are not supposed to be here. But I'm curious your thought. I think so much of it is they don't want to believe that, and they actually buy into this whole thing of they're just kidnapping people, and no one then knows where they go, and they're going after children and schools and innocent people, and like they actually buy the whole narrative.
Yeah, well, they do, and it's you almost can't dissect it because it's just lunacy. Like in Minneapolis, they canceled school into February supposedly to keep students safe, and then they're proud because the students are out protesting. I mean, it's just there's just this craziness, and they're saying, well, they're traveling around in unmarked cars. Well, these women obviously knew who they were because that's why they were there. I mean, there's just no coherence to it. It's all politically motivated, and it's getting there. There've been various theories we talk about on the right, and maybe they're right, maybe they're not. The great replacement theory, all that kind of thing. But it's almost like the Democrats and the progressives are cultivating mental illness through policies that make people unstable so that they can get these people who out there who just can't even process reality. I saw one great video of a guy going around to these protesters asking them about the Somali childcare fraud in Minnesota, and they just wouldn't believe it. And I don't think that's true. I don't think that's really happening. Well, of course not. They won't even admit that an officer was hit by a car when there's video from multiple angles of the officer being hit by the car. That's the environment Democrats want us to live in, apparently. And it's at the end of the day, if you end up on the wrong side of that, the truth will not protect you, because these people don't live they live in a fantasy world where the truth truth doesn't apply.
When the Providence Journal posted the picture of somebody carrying a sign, 8647, no context. They don't bring up the fact that that's actually a threat to the president of the United States. And Justin, you and I both know if that were reverse, if Harris had won and there'd been some kind of a protester at a protest carrying a sign that was making a threat, that not only would they have splashed it, they would have asked for Democrat leader reaction to the fact that that sign was there.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think the timing of this Minneapolis incident was especially telling, coming around January 6th, because on one day you have Democrat Congress people singing songs about, having a memorial about this terrible event that happened 5 years ago, and then the next day it's almost like the polar opposite. So you've got, say, Ashley Babbitt, who was shot on January 6th. She had both of her hands up, climbing through a window, and an officer behind a wall shot her dead. And that was defensible. She was, that from their point of view, she was a threat. He had no idea. He had to do his job. There was no, he could have told her to get on the ground and all that. It's just no, right. Shot her. She was coming through the window. She deserved it. Here, you've got her literally speeding her car toward the officer. You can't do that. He should take the hit. She was no danger. The mayor said, was Jacob Frey. He could have injured himself like that, closing the fridge with his hip. It's crazy talk. It's just insanity. And it switches from day to day, which is why, frankly, I don't feel safe with these people as our leaders and our news media and judges and journalists and politicians. They'll flip the script on anything. There's no consistency. There's no truth. And so one day killing cops is great. The next day it's terrible. It's the worst thing you can possibly do. And that's the world they live in. And there's no justice in a world like that. It's like the French Revolution or like Alice in Wonderland. I don't know which it's more like.
Another thing, and this was something that someone wrote, I forget exactly the name, but it was a woman, and she wrote what she can't understand just as a mother's perspective. And I thought this was pretty accurate. So apparently this Renee Good, the husband died a couple of years ago. So she is the only parent alive, 3 children. I think there's 2 different fathers involved, but there's a 15 and 16-year-old, then there's the 6-year-old. And, your first obligation is to make sure, apparently I think the other children were taken away from her, but the 6-year-old, to think that that's how she was spending her time with now the wife, who's dressed, as people have said, like a 13-year-old boy. And they are going, they moved to Canada. They moved to Minneapolis, I guess because of this charter school. She got involved with this. She was known as like the orchestrator, the leader. A lot of the neighbors said she was the one, that driver, that car, leading the caravan. This is like their new thing. They go, they interrupt, they honk horns, they know the people, they're throwing snowballs at them. Somebody smashed the back window of ICE. I think, Justin, that's what really, this element where people are saying, she was a mother. She was a mother of 3 children. And to me, I just don't hear it asked of exactly what was a mother of 3 with a 6-year-old? What was she even doing interfering with federal agents that were executing a legal operation, or I should say they were implementing a legal operation to get someone?
Right, exactly. And for a fact, if it were flipped the other way, that'd be the first thing out of the mouths. She wasn't a very good mother if she was out there doing this instead of watching her children and making sure she was safe. But I think it reinforces the notion, these people, not the politicians and journalists who know what they're doing, but these people who get involved, I think it's safe to assume mental challenges in many cases, but they don't believe there's any, they think it's like just going out and doing like the neighborhood sign protest thing. They think it's like, what am I going to do today? Do I put out the "No hate is welcome here" sign in my yard, or do I go block officers as they're trying to execute a warrant on an illegal immigrant? They think it's just a game, and it's really not. And that's the disservice that the people who ought to know better are doing. Is they're playing along with the game when they're really the people that all of those activists are looking to at some point say, all right, guys, come on, this isn't a game. We really shouldn't be doing this. And I think it's, I heard somebody talking recently about the corruption, and I wrote about this on Anchor Rising, the corruption in Minneapolis and throughout the federal government, fraud and so on. And the problem with it is the people who are doing it, and we see this in Rhode Island all the time, the people who are doing it, they have invoices, they give receipts, they're doing it right in the open. So it doesn't register as corruption to people. That's why you need responsible politicians like in the Rhode Island Senate to not be celebrating these people, because what they're doing is they're saying it's just a game. This was an accident in a game. It's as if somebody were hurt in a high school football game and was badly injured and died from their injuries. That's kind of how they're looking at it. It's not what's going on here at all. And we need responsible people in the media and government to start behaving that way.
I've also noticed there seemed to be an uptick over the weekend. People were filming, and sometimes the media and others, but they're filming. Some of the federal agents seem to be a little more aggressive in a manner. And what I mean by that is in just going up to some individuals and saying, now, just so you know, I've already warned you, you can't be here. You're going to get arrested. They're giving them fair warning. But what stuck out to me was this smug attitude. And one woman sitting in a car is looking at him as if, like, I'm supposed to believe this, and give him an attitude. On the seat next to her, she actually has adult diapers. They wear diapers around so they don't leave the car as they're chasing them. But what stood out to me was the smug attitude of some of them, or the people that get in front of the vehicle where then they have to physically remove them. I'm telling you, Justin, I think you're right. They're celebrating. It's a smug, but there's elements of mental illness that go with many of these people. This is not a protest. This is no time to protest. This whole notion, they're just peacefully protesting. I don't know how else to explain it. You're interfering with federal agents who are engaged. You know, whether it's Cranston Police or Warwick, if they have a search warrant or they're going to execute a warrant to get someone that they're looking for, you don't have the right to thrust yourself in the middle of that and then act like it's a game and you're going to block them. So I'll give you the final word on it, then we'll do Katz's Corner.
Well, I think not having the right is exactly it. That's not the process. And this is how I responded to Enrique and Representative Enrique Sanchez when he's saying we're going to get them, or they'll pay, we'll make them pay. That's not how we do things in the United States. If you don't like the policy, elect people to change the policy. We don't take the law in our own hands. We don't organize nationwide insurgencies with ICE Watch and give out the phone number so people can track them and chase them down. That's not how it's done, because when you do that, first, people wind up dead, and second, people start to react. I mean, at some point, you're going to get another group like the Proud Boys or whatever coming out and saying, okay, we're coming out now. We will take the law in our own hands. We're going to protect ICE from you. And that gets more and more dangerous. And I think that's the only explanation at this point, is that the Democrats have concluded that sort of Civil War level battle is in their political interest. And I think that's got to be the going assumption at this point.
You know, Justin, I also want to mention, because you had mentioned it, I don't see any follow-up from our local press regarding David Morales, who spoke at that rally at the State House, giving out the phone number, encouraging people. See, they to me, they're very disingenuous, because then they say, and we encourage you, if you see ICE, call that hotline. We send people out, but then we're going to, be there peacefully. The fact of the matter is that they're not even supposed to be there in the first place. And you can't have it both ways. You're encouraging people to show up. If you see this number, call us. We put the hotline out. Then people show up and they have horns and bells and whistles, and they're disingenuous, because they're saying, well, we're going to do it peacefully, when in fact they're interfering with police and they're not even supposed to be there in the first place.
Well, and at a minimum, you would think after an event like the shooting in Minneapolis, they would say, we're going to reconsider our approach. We're going to take a week. We're going to take 2 days and reconsider our approach. The whole peaceful thing, maybe we help to contribute to this. It's not even in their heads, because this is what they want. They want the disruption. They want the violence, because it serves them, because they're radicals. They want to actually undermine the United States of America. I mean, that's really what it ultimately comes down to. There's no other explanation in my mind.
I keep saying one more thing, but also, Justin, what an eye-opener. Friday night, the police chief in Minneapolis was running from the police chief is running from the protesters. And as much as we complain about some of the locals, Have you ever seen anything like that mayor of Minneapolis and that Governor Walz? Justin, they are like living on another planet, that Mayor Fry and then Governor Walz.
Well, I think that's where the stories start to converge, because to me, from what I'm seeing, they're going to wind up being right in the middle of all the billions of dollars of fraud from
Yes.
immigrant communities. And so, I mean, if it's almost too obvious to write the story here, they know they're in the spotlight, and they know the federal government's coming for them because they're in the middle of this historic fraud ring. And so, what are they doing? They're ginning up a battle, so at least it looks political when they're arrested, right? That seems to me to be what's going on. And I think so far Rhode Island, frankly, and I wrote about this too, I think so far Rhode Island's been reasonably good. Maybe it's because our politicians are so entrenched for so long. They didn't let a few years ago the highway blocking activism come to our state. They put a stop to that around here. So far we've been pretty lucky in that, having as many Democrats as we do. But we're starting to see with the Rhode Island Senate, David Morales and Sanchez, they're inviting the chaos to Rhode Island. And I think if Rhode Islanders have any sanity left, we'll start to insist our politicians say, no. We've got enough corruption. We've got enough that doesn't go well here. We're not going to invite this chaos to our state. We'll see if they do that. But so far, everybody on the table seems to think it'd be great fun to have this kind of thing happening.
Folks, it's time for Katz's Corner. This is a story that Justin has found. And what do you have for us this week, Justin?
Well, in keeping with the radicalism, I took a look at the Rhode Island Foundation. I've said before, labor unions, teacher unions specifically, they're really radical activist organizations that use member services to create money or to generate money and get influence. The Rhode Island Foundation is starting to look a lot like that too. The headline is, David Cicilline he's getting close to $1 million in compensation running this organization. They've got $1.3 billion of investment money they're running. And so you start to ask, is this really a charity? And as you watch them propose $300 million and more in state spending on education and other activist kind of policies they've got, no, they're not. They're just another activist organization. So that's something we like to take a look at on Anchor Rising, and that story's up there right now.
I think also they sponsor Newsmakers on Channel 12, and I noticed that at least once a month he pops in and he's a guest in the afternoon Community Focus. I wonder if that's some kind of a package that they give him airtime because he's one of the sponsors of Newsmakers, the Channel 12 show. Which I find is dangerous about that is if they have him sponsoring it, then there's guidelines of the type of thing that they're going to go after as far as topics. Folks, again, you can read about it on anchorrising.com. Justin, a little long today, but excellent work, and we'll talk to you again.
Thank you, John. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, folks, there it is. Justin Katz, managing editor of anchorrising.com, our segment Politics This Week. I want to remind you, this portion of our program is brought to you by Capital Fence. Protect yourself, protect your family. Call Capital Fence today, 401-618-4407, 401-618-4407 for Capital Fence. Give them a call today. Free estimate, residential or commercial. You can depend on Capital Fence. I see on the screen it says test. Sorry about that, folks. I don't know why that popped up like that. I got to get that. I'll get that removed afterwards. I just noticed it for those that anyhow. All right. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But anyhow. Oh, I think I can let me but Capital Fence, folks, call them today. And again, free estimate, 401-618-4407. It's Mike Rizzo. And like I said, I just consider that Capital Fence, what a fantastic job they will do for you. And, and on top of that, you want to make sure that you keep your family safe. Capital Fence. Give them a call today, 401-618-4407, 401-618-4407, or online at capitalfenceri.com. Now, staying on schedule, I also want to mention how, okay, there we go. That's better than the test. Let me stay on schedule here. and remind you, if you have a fire, call Serve Pro of Providence today. Fire, smoke, mold. If you have a fire, you're going to have water damage. Serve Pro of Providence. Give them a call today at 401 941 5500. If you have a flood or you have a fire, call Serve Pro of Providence. They're fast, they're thorough, they're professional. 401 941 5500. 401 941 5500 for Serve Pro of Providence. Now, I also want to mention that, um, again, no one is saying that they don't have all these people protesting. I want to be very clear because I see people say, they have the right to be out there. No one's saying they don't have the right to be out there, but for those people to be in Cranston at St. Paul's Church at the corner of Warwick Avenue and Broad Street and all chanting "ICE out now," it's an attitude towards the police. And it also, I find, to be disingenuous for who ICE is removing. As I have stated, I think if you have people that continue this narrative of that, they're kidnapping people and they're separating families and they shouldn't be out there, and this whole thing that they keep putting forward, I think it's danger. I know it's dangerous. And there's so much about that woman, and people are trying to put out everything that and tear apart what those ICE officers did. But I can tell you that they certainly didn't want any part of those individuals. Of course, it's tragic what happened to Renee Flood, and I hear so many people saying, they shot her in the face and so forth. I don't think people realize that. Look, you have to look at the situation. She was there, and her partner were inflaming the situation, and they were antagonizing the officers, and they were interfering with the officers. They in the United States, we have sanctuary policies. You need to understand when ICE agents, I don't know about this crowd, but most people, when ICE agents are sent out and there's an individual that they have to get, I can tell you it's not easy. They have intelligence of where they believe the person is. They have photos of who the person is, but it's not easy. They don't know who's in that house. They don't know, does that person have a weapon? A lot of things can go wrong when they're trying to detain someone and when they're trying to get someone. And then when you have these individuals showing up, I don't hear anyone talking about that she shouldn't have been there. And it's when I say I don't hear anyone, I'm talking about so many of the Democrats. And Justin was right saying Congressman Gabe Amo murdered in cold-blooded murder. To say that, there's going to be backlash towards police. There's going to be backlash towards law enforcement. As I have stated, why would that be allowed? How would you feel if, a certain area, a community, although I hate the way that word is overused, but if the city of Newport said, we don't cooperate with the FBI, or the city of Warwick said, we don't cooperate with the IRS, or we don't cooperate with ATF. They're federal agents. They're trained, they're sworn in, obviously overwhelmed. That officer, I also don't hear enough pointed out that one of the ICE officers had his hand on the door, was trying to open the door, and then she locked the door so much that her wife couldn't get in. But he's standing there. What if that officer had been dragged? What if something he had on got stuck? She did hit him. What I think is tragic, the tragic part about this, of course it could have been prevented. If Minneapolis was not operated and run as a sanctuary city, police would have been there. And at the very least, police could have been doing crowd control. That's number one. Number two, many people that are out there, and as I'm telling you this, I think it's something that needs to be, put out and stressed to people. Understand those women should not have been there. It's not even wrong place at the wrong time, because it's not as though he missed and then shot an innocent bystander. She was driving her vehicle at him. I believe that this is someone that apparently she's had 2 children taken from her. And anyone that knows anything about family court and so forth, that's not easy to do. In the United States, if you're a mother, to have 2 children removed from you, that is not an easy process. That speaks volumes. And I believe when she suddenly realized that it was not a game and they were going to get arrested, I think she went in her mind, Renee Good, is that she could lose custody of the 6-year-old. And that's why then the other one can't even get into the car. Drive, baby, drive, get flooded out of here. As if, what, now you're involved with a chase with police? Their actions were so reckless. Her obligation was to that 6-year-old child. That 6-year-old child deserved a parent who's going to put them first. And as others have said, Renee Good, she chose chaos. Her life shouldn't have been that complicated. Got the child to school, do what she has to do during the day, and then make sure she got the child safely home from school. Not this whole game of cat and mouse and fighting with federal agents who have firearms. Incredibly reckless and selfish. I can't believe people carrying her picture around. People donated $1.5 million to who? The wife? The wife who right away said, it's my fault. I'm the one that dragged her down here. The wife that was then getting in the face of, what exactly were they doing there? Complete insanity. I think there's something wrong with her. Well, I'm not mad at you. Hey, dude. I'm not even going to say she was on something. Not everyone's on something. She's just off. Clearly misled. The other one seemed to be calling the shots. The other one said that as much. The other one gets out, filming her. They are just, I can't stress it enough, but you don't even hear people mentioning that. Well, yeah, it was actually wife, as she said. I don't know, wife, girlfriend. She had been married, then the husband died. I know I saw that her brother-in-law said she shouldn't have been there. All of their actions are rather, and we'll learn more about this, but I know people talk about moving out of the country because President Trump won. They actually did move to Canada. Anyone that does that is a little off. And then they move back. The fact that she's even with the other one, their behavior is odd to say the least, but it goes beyond that. She didn't live on the street. She wasn't backing up. She didn't need to get somewhere. She wasn't going to work and suddenly the street is closed. They went there to inject themselves. And she, as someone stated, she chose chaos over her child. Really irresponsible. But someone that would lose guardianship of 2 children is not that responsible to begin with. Folks, this portion of the program, be a responsible parent or grandparent. Take your child to Kids Club on the Pike. They have fantastic daycare facility, before and after school care, preschool. Now, they have several schools. You can contact them. Now, the main one, Kids Club on the Pike, is located right on Plainfield Pike on the Cranston-Johnson line. Call them 401-443-5336. 401-443-5336 for Kids Club on the Pike. And again, they offer half and full day program for preschool, and they also do before and after school care. Of course, it is terrible And of course, it is tragic. I mean, when I heard that and you see it, oh my God. And it's so unnecessary. The whole thing is terrible. The whole thing is terrible to me if they actually thought what they were doing was righteous. What makes it worse to me is the people that they were convinced that they were, as we say, on the right side of history on this. She should not have been there. She should not. And I've seen other people, and again, it's a lot of women saying, I can't imagine, I saw this woman did a video and she was saying, I'm married and I have children, and I can't imagine if I stumbled upon a police action and I decided I'm going to fight the police and I'm going to go back and forth with the police. The two of them, this wasn't a protest. They shouldn't have been there. To see people at the Rhode Island State House in Cranston carrying her picture around, they love to create martyrs on the other side. There's another woman who had a meltdown saying the reason they killed her is because she's gay. It's because she drove her vehicle at an officer. It's actually not that complicated. And as I have said, folks, this whole thing of going after the officers, if you were in your driveway and you had a weapon and someone came flying up there, your driveway, with ill intent and gunning it at you, you would have the right, self-defense, to fire at them. It does happen, right? Many times that's not exactly the equation. Many times it's stand your ground, but it's all about that. It's not as though they just fired her as she was in park. All she had to do was put the car in park. Now, but I believe she was going to get arrested. That's why they were going to take her out of the vehicle. And as a result of that, she was maybe going to be in danger of losing the 6-year-old. So instead, she made the choice to put that car in drive, and the other one is telling her to do it. What an influence on that one. Picking out the wardrobe, just absolutely disgraceful. I hear from so many parents that their kids are good kids, but they just hang with the wrong crowd and they get influenced. The same goes for some adults. The same goes for her. She clearly was then influenced by the wife. All right. Listen, folks, we're going to continue to follow the story. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to Justin. Stay warm. Go Patriots. Enjoy this Monday.